Hello internet friends and welcome to the video. Grab a blanket, turn down the lights, and pray that your roommate doesn't turn into one of these creatures lurking in these creepy castles we're about to talk about. Originally I was just looking for some haunted castles to show you guys since Halloween's coming up, but I realized with castles, it's usually the same story. Super old castle, lots of spirits haunt said castle, but if you're a believer in the paranormal, any castle that is as old, or some cases even older than the country that I live in, it's gonna be haunted simply by how many people have lived and died there over the years. So I was feeling myself drawn to the castles with especially strange entities haunting their echoing empty halls. So without further rambling, here are 3 of the creepiest castles haunted by horrifying creatures. Now, you may have heard of Leap Castle before. It's considered by many to be the most haunted castle in the entire world, or at the very least, the most haunted castle in Ireland. It's been around since the 13th century and was possibly built on top of ancient druidic ceremonial grounds. Yes, let's build things on sacred grounds of the druids. That sounds like a great idea. And Leap Castle is where the O'Carroll clan resided, and they were the ruling chieftain family in the region at the time, the bigwigs. They were known for being particularly conniving and dickheadish when it came to acquiring power, so think the Lannisters, but Irish. And also, just like the Lannisters, they were willing to do just about anything to be sitting on that high horse, including, but not limited to, killing your own brother, who's a priest, while he's holding a mass for other members of your family by stabbing him with a sword and leaving him to bleed out at the altar. I guess the dead brother truly was a holy man. I'm sorry. That joke has not ever, will not ever be funny, especially in that context, but I said it anyways. No tact, no surprise there. The chapel where the brother was killed is now known as the Bloody Chapel, how appropriate, but you may be surprised to know that this isn't the worst of the O'Carrolls' long list of committed atrocities. They would hire mercenaries to hunt down and kill their enemies for them, first of all, and then invite the mercenaries back for a big fancy dinner at the castle. And of course they show up. They've pillaged, they've killed, they're about to make bank, and in addition, a big old dinner. Hell yeah, you show up. Except, oh wait, the food's poisoned, and then they slash your throat, just for good measure, I imagine. But they're not done. The O'Carrolls had a special room called an oubliette, which is a room usually used to store valuables or to hide your kids and hide your wives if your enemies come knocking at the castle door. Is that what the O'Carroll clan used it for? Of course not. Oubliette is derived from the French term to forget, and the O'Carrolls threw their victims into this tiny room through a trapdoor and left them there to die, ultimately forgotten about. And still, if that wasn't cruel enough, the family modified the chamber to have wooden spikes protruding out of the floor, so if being poisoned and stabbed didn't kill you, welcome to a slow and painful death being impaled on the dungeon floor. But apparently, Leap Castle's violent history wasn't enough for later owners who just had to make the place a little bit creepier than it already was. So in 1659, the O'Carroll family finally loses charge of the castle, and it eventually passes into the hands of Jonathan Charles Darby and his wife Mildred. And Mildred was very into the occult, and some say that she is responsible for awakening or unleashing a creature that she referred to as It. It carries the sweet stench of decaying flesh or sulfur and is part sheep, part decaying human, 100% terrifying. Bah! Several visitors and even Mildred herself documented their encounters with this creature and said that it has gray or bluish skin, with most of its body covered in gray or black sheep-like wool, and on its face, where its eyes and nose should be, are just large cavities of nothingness. Its skin is half falling off, and it has swollen, drooling lips with a lower jaw that just likes to kind of like hang low, and it appears to be human, but it was so grotesque and unsettling that it is wretchedly inhuman at the same time. So is it a human? Is it a sheep, or is it something else entirely? Well, many claim it is actually an elemental, and when I first heard that, I thought of Avatar: The Last Airbender, or fairies. No. Sometimes elementals can be associated with actual elements, but the elemental we're referring to is often found in alchemy or occult texts, and while it can't firebend or spread pixie dust, it is, quote, malevolent, terrifying, and unpredictable. So, did Mildred conjure up this creature? Well, some think so, but others believe it's been around since the druids were chillin', performing rituals like you do when you're a druid. But let's just stop for a second. You think, if I come face to face with eyeless, noseless, drooling Magoo back there, I'm gonna care who the fuck put it there? Or am I just gonna scream like a little schoolgirl and run in the opposite fucking direction? Yeah. The second option, please. Thank you. Several other spirits are said to haunt Leap Castle, including a man who pushes barrels down a hill from the old priest's quarters. He sounds like a barrel of laughs. Sorry. And 2 little girls thought to be named Emily and Charlotte. Emily, who died after falling from atop the castle, and Charlotte, who was often seen dragging her sister's body around. I'd be that sister. Then there's the Red Lady, who appears holding a dagger above her head, looking ready to shank someone. And if rumors about her being captured, raped, and impregnated by the O'Carroll clan are true, she has every right to be angry, I think. Visitors report seeing bright light anomalies, shadows in the priest's house, and some poltergeist activity, as well as feeling like someone is pressing against their chest. But not like in a sexual way. In like a, I'm gonna suffocate you by sitting on you kind of way. But hopefully the current owner is able to keep bringing the Leap Castle back to life through renovations, despite all of its dead, sometimes decaying residents still wandering the halls inside. I have a feeling it and I won't get along, so I'll be visiting in the daylight. Next, we're traveling to Austria to visit what I, at first glance, thought was Moonsham Castle, only to realize it was Moosham Castle, which isn't as foreboding or as fitting of a name for a place that at one point supposedly harbored werewolves and witches. Yep, you heard that right, werewolves and witches. It's getting super Halloween-y in here. But all joking aside, Moosham Castle was the site of one of the largest, most brutal witch hunts in history, hence its other name, the Witch's Castle. Moosham was first mentioned in a deed in the year 1191, so it's pretty fucking old. Then around the 17th and 18th century, the castle is turned into a district court, during which time the Salzburg witch trials are taking place. So between the years 1675 and 1690, thousands of people are accused of witchcraft, and strangely enough, a majority of them were male, under the age of 21, sometimes as young as 10 to 14 years old. And Moosham was the hub for this witch hunt. It's where the accused were taken, imprisoned, tried, tortured, and sometimes even killed. People often had their hands chopped off or burned with branding irons, and methods of execution included being burned alive, hanged, or decapitated. And an estimated 100 to 139 people were executed at Moosham alone, many of them orphans, children without homes, or beggars, the people who had no one to vouch for their character as non-witchy citizens. And chances are, a majority, if not all of these people, were innocent of the crimes they were being accused of. So naturally, it makes sense that the grounds of Moosham are allegedly stalked by those murdered within the castle, but about 100 years later, residents at Moosham believed that they were being preyed upon by a different creature of the night, this time werewolves. So in the 1800s, staff at Moosham and local villagers noticed their cattle and the wild deer population turning up mutilated in excessive numbers. Then allegedly, a few of the villagers turned up dead in much the same fashion, and the killings looked to be the work of a dangerous, bloodthirsty animal. So villagers believed that the werewolf was residing within Moosham Castle, but local authorities thought differently and arrested several villagers accused of being werewolves before taking them to the castle, where they were tortured until they confessed and were killed for their crimes. And I don't believe in werewolves, so I'm inclined to believe that these people were all innocent as well. Today the castle is sort of a museum, and those who visit claim to feel someone touching or breathing on them, or they hear the disembodied voices of those who were unjustly murdered, screaming, crying, or whispering, along with the sounds of their footsteps attempting to flee their captors, and the sounds of doors opening and slamming shut. Some claim to have even seen apparitions of prisoners in chains, but mostly it's the feelings of dread, depression, and being watched that lead many to feel nauseous after their visit. But I don't know if that's necessarily a result of the paranormal. It seems as though it would just be the energy of a place that has seen so much unjustified, needless slaughter of innocents that it would just make any person feel that way. And we've come to number 1, which of course had to be Houska Castle in the Czech Republic. It's not our oldest castle, nor is it the castle that has seen the most bloodshed, but to me, it is by far the creepiest right from its very beginnings in the 13th century. Because you see, Houska Castle was not made for a king to sit on his throne or as a stronghold against invading enemies. From all appearances, it is a fortress made to keep something trapped inside rather than out. It was built miles and miles from trade routes and water systems and in dense woods that were not fit for hunting. So firstly, its location made no sense to the Bohemian ruler Ottokar II, who commissioned the castle to be built allegedly to serve as a headquarters to manage his estates. But they were miles from the nearest city, and without the kind of transportation that we have today, you'd think it would have some sort of living provisions inside. But that's not the case. It was built without a kitchen which is a sin, and the walls are thickest on the lower levels instead of the upper levels, and it's structured so that the defensive walls face inwards instead of out, specifically towards the inner courtyard, which has no easy access, again lending to the idea that it wasn't built to keep something out, but to trap something inside, which makes sense considering the legends that Huska was built to seal the gateway to hell. So word is that back in the 12th and early 13th century, where Huska now stands, those who lived in the nearby forest claimed there was a deep crevice in the limestone at the top of this hill. It was a hole so large you couldn't see or reach the bottom, and after dark, allegedly, half-demon, half-human creatures with black wings like to crawl out of this pit and circle the night skies like vultures, terrorizing local livestock populations and just generally causing havoc for any nearby. So villagers obviously assume it's the gateway to hell. This mysterious crevice even caught the attention of a local clan ruler, who told several of his prisoners that were set to be executed, "Hey, I'll get you a get-out-of-jail-free card if you agree to be lowered into that there hole over there and tell me what you see while you're down there." Who knows if he was telling the truth or not, because the first person that volunteered as tribute to be lowered into the darkness immediately began screaming hysterically at the top of his lungs, so of course they pull him back up, and he's aged 30 years. Wrinkles, white hair and all, and is completely bonkers. And he died just days later. I guess in a way he did get his freedom, but perhaps not the way he thought he would. So the clan leader and the villagers were like, whoops, that was probably a bad idea. Let's try filling it with rocks. Yeah, the demons can't get out if they're buried under a fuck ton of rocks, except no matter how many rocks they threw into the pit, they never seem to be making any progress because
hell is an endless pit of death and fire.
So then, allegedly, they decided to try and contain whatever hellfire is down there as best they can by building a castle over it. And thus begins the construction of Huska Castle, and extra care is taken to be sure that the chapel is built over top this alleged hole, and the chapel itself is adorned with all sorts of frescoes, everything from the lovely to the downright eerie. For instance, in one corner you have Michael the Archangel in battle against the armies of hell, and in the other corner you have the crucifixion of Jesus Christe. But there's also an image that depicts a creature with a lower body of a horse and an upper body of a human woman, sort of like a centaur, but with larger testicles, obviously. But a centaur is usually a creature found in pagan mythologies at the time, not Christian. So did building the chapel and castle over the hole plug it up for good? Apparently not, as locals to this day claim to see inhuman shadows moving within the windows and creatures stalking the night skies just as they did over 800 years ago. But from 1939 to 1945, the demons had to share their castle with Earth's own version of Hellions, the Nazis. Not much is really known about what the Nazis did while occupying the castle, but it is known that Huska was not a strategic place for the Germans to occupy during the war. Thus, many believe the Nazis were conducting experiments here, everything from dimensional portals to human genetic experimentation, or even using the castle as a breeding farm to further the master race. Ugh. As the Russian and the US armies were closing in, however, the Nazi Party allegedly burned all of their records, so we'll probably never know exactly what happened there. But regardless of its past visitors, the claims of strange experiences within Huska are seemingly endless. You have everything from time travel to people feeling like they're being watched or followed, or having extremely bad luck after leaving the castle. Dead birds appear in large numbers in the inner courtyard, and some say that they see a line of deformed prisoners chained together walking in the direction of the castle, with each prisoner carrying their own various body parts. Then, of course, there's a woman dressed in white, a crazy ghost monk who comes at you with an axe if he's feeling peckish, I guess, and a black headless horse, and last, but not least, a creature that can only be described as the horrific spawn of a bulldog, a frog, and a human. Somehow, that must work, right? Genetics? Baby making? I don't know. I didn't make it up, I'm just reporting it to you. Somehow it works, but still, no thank you. But here's the thing. There's no photographic or legitimate historical evidence that this hole even exists. And it would be easy to find out, especially since the current owners are doing renovations, but here's why that might be a bad idea. The Nazis resided here, right? And those fuckers would do anything to hide their secrets, even if it meant dying for them. Who's to say they didn't discover this hole and guard it with traps or explosives? I mean, we don't know, but I think even if there's a slight chance of blowing up searching for this hole that may not even exist, I wouldn't want to risk it. Too many lawsuits, methinks. So, concluding thoughts, what have castles taught me? Well, they've taught me that being in the occult is a hip thing to do, and that I should get right on that, but that it's also important to remember the history of these places, even if it is horrible and violent at times, because Let's face it, humans are a lot more terrifying than any monster we can ever conjure up in our minds. Alright guys, that's all I've got for you today, but special announcement! Are you listening? Next week's video will be out on Wednesday, not Friday. Wednesday, not Friday. And one more time, Wednesday. Next video will be out on Wednesday. It's a special video. It may or may not be a collaboration with another fellow horror YouTuber. You may or may not know this YouTuber, but chances are you probably do. Now, does that sound like a horror collaboration that you want to miss? I don't think so. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out a lot. And be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more creepy videos from me, because there's always more on the way. You can also click over there to see my last episode of Dark Matters, my series where we delve into unsolved or strange true crime cases. Or if you're looking for some more creepy creatures, the last episode of Monsters Among Us on Filipino creatures can be found below over there. So be sure to check that out. Thank you again for watching. Stay safe, friends. Stay out of castles. And I will see you in the next video. Have a good night. You're gonna weed eat right the fuck now? I just got my dog to stop barking. And the neighbor just goes... If you hear a weed eater or a lawnmower, it's because fuck my neighbors. This is either your lame boy. Lame boy. There is a dead house centipede on the ground, and I'm gonna cry.